Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. Most people do not utilize this amazing tool properly. This tool can make or break your mixes. Today we will be talking about the equalizer or EQ. See you after the music. Welcome back. I am Julian Mascanas, Chief Sound Engineer at ENZY Studios. In this series, we are going to educate audio engineers who have just started out and help them understand the fundamentals of audio engineering. To enjoy more of this content, do subscribe to this channel. By the end of this video, you should know what is EQ and how to use it. Let's get into it. What is EQ and what are its parameters? Let's go straight into the door. So guys, I am going to explain about the parametric EQ. This is my favorite parametric EQ, one of my favorite parametric EQ, FabFilter Pro Q2. Let's start with the Bell EQ straight away. This is Bell EQ. You can see this is gain, this is Q, and the Q is the bandwidth. Like for the broader band, you can use the minimum Q. And for the narrow bandwidth, you can use the maximum Q. So this Bell EQ can be used for boosting frequency, and also this EQ is one of the versatile EQ for cutting all the bad resonance frequency. Let's set an example for you all guys. So now I'm going to boost the frequency. Now I'm going to check the bad resonance. Guys, I hope you understood the importance of Bell EQ. Now let me tell you something about this also. This is the curve where you can control by 12 dB. For 24 it goes to till 96. So while doing Bell EQ, I always use this 12 dB octave. Now let's next go to the low shelf. Let's go to low shelf and high shelf. So low shelf set off, and high shelf set over here. So let me tell you something about low shelf or high shelf. This shelf filters can boost or cut above or below a specific frequency. You can see over here, if you can set from 1 kilohertz, then you can increase the frequency from 1 kilohertz. Let's put gain till 6 dB. I just want to tell you something about this slope. So now what happens, like if you set to 1 kilohertz, then the actual gain is 6 dB, but the frequency which you have set, it will start from 3 dB. Same applies to the low shelf. Same principle applies to low shelf. Suppose if I'm putting 100 hertz, then this 100 hertz set 6 dB gain. This 100 hertz, you can see this line, it comes to 3 dB. So that's the algorithm of this low shelf and high shelf. What kind cool about shelf is very natural. Like if you put a Bell EQ around this range, let me tell you an example. If you put a Bell EQ around this range, okay, and just play the track. I want you to hear the track. Now I'm applying the high shelf EQ on the same area. Now see the difference of sound. The bell EQ, what's the problem is because of the center frequency, it's little aggressive, whereas the high shelf it's smooth. Please check out. Now I'm going to do undo and make you hear the difference between a bell EQ. If you're boosting heavy, then always use a shelf EQ for brightening up the song. Let's hear the bell and shelf by undoing. So it's little aggressive than shelf EQ. Shelf EQ is very natural. Now let's go to the next low cut. Low cut, as you can see, it cuts all the area over here. If you set till 200, then it will start from 200. It will cut till 200. You can also adjust the slope by this octave thing, like 96 dB. Will have this curve. Same applies with high cut. So this Q thing, as you can see, it changes the curve altogether. You can always check and hear what you're doing with this Q. It makes a lot of difference. Same with the low thing, like you can see the slope changing to this curve. Now let's go to the next notch filter. Notch filter. This notch filter, I would tell you about this notch filter is this is basically only have this particular area. You can find the treble frequency, like just decrease the bandwidth and check. So you can use this notch filter to find out the bad spectrum and just use it, and you can also try using these things on this notch filter. Now let's go to the bandpass. Bandpass, as you can see, bandpass, just hear it with the track. So from this side it cuts, and from this side it cuts. The low frequency area gets cut, and the high frequency area it's get cut, and it comes to only this area where it functions. Let's check with the track again. I hope you understood the bandpass. Now let's go to tilt shelf. This very interesting thing. This point it gets split and then it's tilt, like the high frequency goes up and the low frequency goes down. And in case if you want to decrease the highs, this lows will go up. Check with the track. Check out this tilt, experiment with it guys. So moving on, every EQ has its own color. If you use a stock plugin EQ and if you use XXIII from Wave Bundle, you can see much difference in sound. Let me demonstrate in a DAW. So guys, this is Avid EQ and this is XXIII from Wave Bundle. So what we are going to do is I am going to put an high shelf over here at 5 dB. Both the plugins are in factory default. It's just the gain I'm doing it 5 dB, and then let's go here and say 3 kilohertz. The same applies over here. I'm going to set 3 kilohertz and say 5 dB gain, and then let's go to high shelf. So these both are in factory default. I have just set this to 3 kilohertz, this to 3 kilohertz, gain 5 dB, and this is 5 dB. Let's hear the difference in sound now. Now hear the XXIII. Guys, as you have observed, the highs, this is a little bit more aggressive than the XXIII. That's maybe because of its algorithm. Like as I said, every plugin has its own algorithm and own color. So this slope is little different from this slope. So the factory default slope of XXIII is different from the stock plugin. Do check out guys, hear the differences of the sound. Those were two amazing plugins. So guys, always remember, you are not falsely monitoring your sound, because if your monitors are false, then the amount of EQ you apply will go for a toss. That means your mix will go for a toss. So to avoid this, you should have a proper monitor in a proper treated room with a proper calibration, and also should get a good pair of headphones which you are comfortable with. I have listed few headphones. If you want to check out, then check out this video over here. It is extremely important to do a simple balance and gain automation when you start any EQ while mixing. This will help you hear all different instruments and frequencies clearly. Another common mistake made by engineers is soloing the track and EQing. Doing so restricts you to understand the frequency clashes from different tracks. That's why always EQ with other tracks to understand the frequency. Solo EQ is only useful when you want subtractive EQ. If you want to cut the unwanted resonance, harshness and muddiness in that particular track, then you can do solo EQ. Sometimes cutting a bass guitar may immediately make you think of cutting a low frequency in an EQ like a high pass filter. This is the most common mistakes made by engineers. The best way is to reduce the level and will solve all the issue you are facing. I would like to take a moment and thank you guys for the immense support and love you have shown to our channel. Our series have hit 75,000 views. If you appreciate what we do, then leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Here's the fun fact: EQ is used everywhere, even in the places you don't expect. For example, the telephony effect of vocal is used by a simple EQ setting. Alright, so on with the video now. There is something that is present in your room no matter where you are. The room tone. It is a low rumble which is unwanted. Get high pass filter to 50 Hz to cut this room rumble and then further process your track. Here's another pro tip: do not make drastic EQ changes on any sound elements or any instruments unless they have a valid reason for it. Another common mistakes made by amateur sound engineers is always boosting frequencies. First, always cut and get rid of an unwanted frequency. To get rid of the unwanted frequency, you should have a bell EQ with a narrow bandwidth and sweep it across the frequency spectrum to find the unwanted resonant frequency, harshness or muddiness. And if you have a broader bell EQ with a broader bandwidth, it will affect the sound. So always have a narrow bandwidth. Let me show you in the DAW. So guys, as I said, for the bad resonant frequency, use bell EQ, and let's check. So guys, in this way you can search the bad resonant frequency and cut it through bell EQ. I hope आपको समझ आया हो. I hope आपको bouncer नहीं गया हो. I have posted video on Dynamic EQ, which is another amazing tool. Check it out over here and understand the difference between EQ and Dynamic EQ. Moving on, there are mainly two types of EQ: minimum phase EQ and linear phase EQ. Most of the DAW we use is minimum phase EQ. In case if you want to boost excessive frequency in a particular instrument, then you should use linear phase EQ, cause there is no phase shift in linear phase EQ. Let me show you the difference between linear phase EQ and minimum phase EQ. So guys, this is the signal generator. Now I'm going to EQ with the minimum phase EQ. I'm going to boost this area and check with the minimum phase EQ. I'll record this on the track. Now I'll change it to linear phase and then I'll record it in the linear phase track. Now let's see the difference of this linear phase and minimum phase. So as I'm zooming in, you can see the difference is this is the linear and it's not changing with the original, whereas the minimum phase, you can see there's a phase shift over here. This is the difference. This is the sample shift, is the phase shifting over here on minimum phase. So guys, that's the difference between a linear phase EQ and a minimum phase EQ. Most DAW has a delay compensation. That's the reason you have a minimum phase EQ in all DAW. But in case if you are facing drastic phase shifting issues or latency issues, you should use linear phase EQ. Linear phase EQ is also good for individual track. If it's not sounding good, then minimum phase EQ will do the job. Linear phase EQ is used in mastering. I hope you understand the difference between minimum phase EQ and linear phase EQ. If there's any doubt or questions, do write in the comment below. The last tip for the day: don't do any drastic EQ while mastering. It might change the balance of the song. Always fix it on your mix. You should do a mild EQ around half dB to 1 dB in mastering. That depends upon the frequency spectrum of the song. I hope you enjoyed this video, and with this now we understand the different types and uses of EQ. Use your ears and equalize according to the need of the production and frequency distribution of the song. And this brings to the end of the video. Do like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, check out this video.